Oh, no!
Everybody, that's not a real person. It's a stunt man. Okay, now this right here isn't gonna bother him because he's insane, okay?
Good Lord. What are you watching?
Do the dance for me, baby!
Who doesn't love summer school? Seriously, how could I not start it like that? All right, man, it's time. It's time to knock out another huge horror franchise with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of my favorite shirts, and one of my all-time favorite posters as well, the white one, and with this on it. I just think it's fantastic. It was, I think, besides Halloween, it might be my first horror poster I ever owned because I just adored it. I don't know what it was. I think it was like most horror posters were so dark, and this one was like all white with this across, and I just loved this whole like who will survive and what will be left of them and everything. Anyway, we're not here to talk about posters, are we? So yeah, I got the 40th anniversary edition. It's a 4K transfer. And yeah, it's so cool because yeah, you got this side and then you flip it around and you've got the door, the freaking door that closes. So cool. This is such a great set. 4-disc set. It's got tons and tons of special features. I remember I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine, Brandon Kinchin, and we were talking about how there was all these Blu-ray copies coming out. And I think we were talking about Halloween and The Shining specifically because the transfers on those are so incredible. This was years ago. And he was telling me that he didn't know if he wanted to see a Blu-ray cleanup of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because, you know, some of the charm of the film is the grit and the grime and the, you know, rough edges of it. And seeing it all super cleaned up might have less impact. But this just looks awesome. It, of course, with the film stock the way that it was and how low budget it was, the grain is still there. It's just much cleaner film so that you can see everything a lot more. It didn't lose any of that at all. So if anyone's ever like worried about that or something and they're like, I don't know if I want to pick this one up, I highly recommend it. It's a great set. I remember I got it at Walmart for cheap. Right when it came out too, I was shocked when I saw it there and it was like cheap. It was like $15 or less or something. I was like, okay, I'm picking this up. So that's the best transfer. I have a few different copies, obviously, over the years, but that's the one I watched, and it looks beautiful, and there's so many special features. I was even watching a little bit of the commentary right before I came out here. But let's get into the film itself. I remember showing this film to a buddy of mine back then, and his comments after was, literally all this movie is a girl running through the woods and going, ah, the entire film. And I was just like, is it? Because I think it's a masterpiece. I was so in love with it at this time, and he just thought it was horrible. He's like, it's literally just a girl screaming the whole time. I'm like, that is not what it is. But I do have to admit that once it gets to that scene where Sally's being chased by Leatherface, that goes on for a while, but that just adds to the madness. I love it. So, he's crazy. You don't know what the hell he's talking about. All right, so now we get the opening narration here that is done by Jean Larroquette, and supposedly he was paid for that with a joint. That's it. That was his payment. Get high, man. This is the benefits of making a film in 1973. I also have to say, I do not know a film that has, a horror film, that has a better title. This is the greatest title in horror history to me. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What's better than that? I don't know of any. I adore the title. It is straight to the point. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. There's no like, I wonder if... No. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's funny because this film isn't very gory or anything, and it's not super violent. But when I make jokes here and there, when I'm talking about film, like, you know, let's say I'm talking to a person and I'm going home to my kids or something like that, I'll tell them, like, they'll be like, oh, what are you doing tonight? And I'll be like, oh, as a joke, I'll be like, oh, well, you know, I'll do this, and then, you know, we'll just finish up the night with like a little Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And they're always like, oh my God, whatever. Like, they know I'm joking, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're like, people, really? Are you sure you're gonna do that? And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna show them this. But it's that title. That title instantly, even if they don't know what it is or even whatever, it's just like instantly like, that is not a movie you should be showing 5-year-olds. So I don't know. I don't know of any better title than that. I'd love to see a title you think is more to the point and a better title. And so we get this opening narration, which is just awesome. It's such a great, you know, way to start it. It sets it up so well. And then we move into those like pictures being taken and that noise. I've read what that noise is, but man, that noise is so freaking iconic. Like when I hear it, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre instantly. It's so eerie. And then we get this like opening shot of this decomposing corpse, and it's like dripping the fat off of its face, and it's like put up there like a shrine. It's got like another head, and it's like all positioned like an idol or something. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, not anywhere near as pretty. If you guys ever watched the show Hannibal, which is excellent, at least the first 2 seasons were incredible. 3rd season, I actually didn't ever finish, which I'm embarrassed to admit. I do want to finish that eventually, but I loved the first 2 seasons. But the framing of those bodies, like that's the coolest part of the show for me, was just to see what they were going to do next. And that show is based on the same killer that this one is, Ed Gein. But yeah, just like, you know, the artistic expression of posing the corpses after the murders. And this is more, they're digging them up so that they can exhume some of their extremities and take out their organs and whatever. I'm guessing to eat, because they just can't keep killing people. I don't know. I have to expect that the Hitchhiker was the one that was responsible for the grave robbings, because he's the one that's out. And another thing that I don't feel like gets enough credit is background characters in films, especially this one. These hillbilly, redneck, cowboy. Not that all cowboys are rednecks. They're not. But in this film, they very much have this, you know, creepy feel to them. Like you're a foreigner in their lands, and they can do anything they want to. And there's that drunk guy who's just like falling back and just spewing rhetoric. It just adds to the film. They're not main characters. They're not going to get any credit, but they just add to it. It's just that little extra that these films possess that makes it work even better. And as soon as they pick up the Hitchhiker, Franklin's first, you know, decision is to make fun of the guy by calling him Dracula, which he does twice. So I'm not surprised that he went after Franklin and attacked him. But so the Hitchhiker, which never really gets a name, grabs the knife from Franklin and cuts himself in an attempt to impress them. And when they're not impressed, he then has this look on his face of like pain, and it's almost like a mixture of physical pain from the cut on his hand mixed with emotional pain, because he's like embarrassed or, you know, unaccepted, and he doesn't know how to act in that way because he's just kind of awkward. I've always been fascinated by the look on his face when he cuts himself, and the aftermath of like studying and watching their reactions and how they're not into it like maybe he thought they would be. I don't know exactly what he thought was going to happen there, but he almost looks like he's, you know, embarrassed and hurt, as I said, physically and emotionally. And then he hands it back, and then he gets back into his own world, and he's just like taking pictures, and he's like, or a picture. He takes Franklin's picture, doesn't like it, so he burns it up. I'm not sure why, you know, Jerry didn't pull over way before this and let that guy out. As soon as he cut him, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. And then when he does burn that, Jerry pulls over, and the Hitchhiker attacks Franklin, and nobody does absolutely anything to help him. And I was just sitting there laughing at that, like, nobody? Really? You're not gonna help this guy at all? And then when he gets out and he's like running next to the car and he's painting his blood on the side of the car, like they're all just screaming, and then they're driving away, and Sally is the only one that comes to help Franklin, asks him if he's okay, anything. The rest of them are just like so whatever about it, and they're so in their own head, like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. Like, Franklin just was assaulted. He had a knife taken to his arm and he's bleeding. This is an invalid. This is a man in a fucking wheelchair, and nobody cares. I mean, so much to the point that a minute later, Pam's just sitting there reading a horoscope and overemphasizing that Franklin's having a shitty day and that was fated to be. And it's like, Pam, shut the fuck up. Like, really? Like, we don't need this right now. Get out of here. Then they get to the gas station, which I always love the window washer guy. When I was younger, I always thought that might be Leatherface, because he seems like he's also mentally handicapped, and he's there at the family business, but we don't see him at the table later. So I don't know if he just works there and somebody else comes and picks him up. I also had another thought at that time too, that I thought he was the barbecue at once Sally comes back and sees that stuff, but I don't think that's true either. I think he's just yet another redneck, hillbilly, inbred kind of guy who just so happens to work there. But yeah, I always had theorized when I was a kid that was actually Leatherface, and then we got to see him. I know that's not Gunnar Hansen, the guy who plays Leatherface, but since we never see Leatherface's face, and we don't really see any of these attributes, I can't say whether or not it is him, although Leatherface's stature is a little different. So I'm not saying that I believe that now. I'm just saying once upon a time I used to think that was. But I like that guy. He just keeps coming back and forth. Like every time, the dad would come in and forth, back and back. And now, where am I? Oh yeah, so Franklin asks the dad, the gas station attendant, whatever. He says, do you know where the old Franklin place is? And that's an interesting line to me, because I'm guessing that, because usually when it comes to like a homestead, the last name is what's said, not the first name. Like, people aren't known by their first names when it comes to their legacies like that usually. Like when we talk about people that are famous or their homesteads or any of that stuff, we use their last name. But he says the old Franklin place, and it's supposed to be Franklin and Sally's grandfather. So was Franklin named after his grandfather? That must be it. But I just found that kind of odd, because like the old Franklin place, it's just, I was like, Franklin, but I know their name, Sally Hardeston. So it's Franklin Hardeston as well. So I don't know, I just found that to be interesting, and I've caught it here and there, but I thought I'd mention it just for fun. And the little symbol on the car, I'm sure it's just nothing, but I've always looked at it to try to see if there is some kind of symbol to it, like maybe it mirrors that little trinket that's hanging from above the door or something else in the film. Maybe that's why Franklin's like, Sally, when he sees it. But yeah, I've always looked at it like, what is that? Is that nothing? I think they just splattered some blood on the car, and I'm looking into it for something, but I can't. Speaking of Franklin, a buddy of mine, Travis Gillespie, despises this character. I know a lot of people dislike him, but like, he almost doesn't like the movie. In fact, I'm not even sure he does like the movie all that much, because of how much he hates Franklin's character. And when Franklin's like blowing raspberries or whatever the hell you want to call it, he's like goes on for so long, and he whines and he bitches the entire time. Although he is an invalid who was invited by Sally to come out, come on, Franklin, it'll be fun. Like, they're like, come on out. And then he gets cut up, and they're just like ridiculing him. Like, Jerry comes out and he's like, Franklin, I gave him your address. I gave him, like, he's gonna kill you. It's like, dude, a psychopath had just attacked this guy. He's terrified, and you're gonna egg him on when you didn't do anything to help. You should have pulled over way long before that. This is partially your fault. So I just was like, man, we're being really mean to this guy. Yes, he's annoying. I'm not gonna say that he isn't annoying. He is. But It's like 110 fucking degrees outside. This guy's in a wheelchair. They brought him out, and everyone's ignoring him. And when he gets attacked, no one's there to even help him. So it's just like, I don't know, man. As much as I don't like Franklin, I think that that's some crazy shit. We also find out in this that Franklin has been crippled since at least he was a child. So I don't know if he was born like this, but he's been in that chair since he was a kid. Because when they go down to the watering hole, they mention that he would have had to been carried down there as a child. So he's been like that for a long, long time. And then we move into, you know, the scene where, you know, oh man, this scene is incredible. Kirk is walking into the house, which I always have to think, like, is Leatherface within his legal rights to kill them? Of course, he shouldn't cut them up and eat them and all that stuff, obviously. That would be a beyond and then whatnot. But the initial blow and killing him, and then killing, you know, Pam as she comes in the house, and then Franklin for being on his land, I don't know. I don't know how that would all work. Like, I don't know how that all works. But being in the house, like, they came into his house without his permission. You know, Kirk and Pam do. And Jerry. So I feel like he's within his legal rights. As I said, I don't think you're allowed to cut them up then with a chainsaw and whatnot and hang them on meat hooks, of course. But I always wonder on that, like, legality standpoint, like, especially in 1973 when this was being filmed. But yeah, so anyway. But this sequence of Kirk going in the house, and he walks in and he trips over that board, and then Leatherface pops out, and the meat, you know, the meat clear or whatever, the meat hammer or whatever, meat tenderizer comes up, and sledgehammer, there we go. He comes up and he just whacks him over the head, and Kirk falls to the ground, and he just starts convulsing like horribly, and then he just claps him again, and then he just slides that door shut, and that wow sound happens. It's like part of the music, but it actually feels like it's part of the door as well. Fuck, I love that sequence. And then that moves right into Pam getting off of that swinging chair, and it like goes under and follows her ass as she's walking up to the house. I think that's probably the best shot in the film to me. Like, it's arguable, but that sweeping shot under the swing chair, and then her walking up to the house. I would say, like, if you were going to show me any part of this film that it's like instantly going to be recognizable and iconic to me, I feel like that's the shot. That brings me into Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's a couple other shots for sure. The, you know, aforementioned one with Kirk and him slamming the door. But I don't know, there's something about that shot. It's beautiful and haunting and eerie, and it just works on so many levels. And then she goes in there and she falls over all these bones and that big chair with like the body spread out against it. That's another fantastic shot. And when she runs out of there and Leatherface comes out and he like squeals and runs after her. Fuck, that's terrifying. Like, imagine being her in that position, and she likes. Then he picks her up as she's running out the door. She almost got free. Like, the sun hit her. She was out in the light, and then boom, pulled right back into the darkness. And he takes her in. He hangs her up on the meat hook, which is just gnarly. And she's just sitting there. And imagine that, like being hung from a meat hook while you watch your boyfriend cut up by a chainsaw. Like, even though we don't really see all so much, our imaginations fill in the blanks, for sure, but the mental state of that girl in that moment, the terror that would be in her. Like, I almost want to believe she would die of a heart attack. Like, I don't think your body can take that much terror, especially with a meat hook through the back of you like that. Oh my God, I feel like she, outside of Sally, because Sally just mentally is destroyed by the end of this. But just as someone who died in this, I think she definitely gets the worst of it. Pam has the worst death. Oh my God. That is, woo. This movie's fucking crazy. Like, watching it again, it is wild. It conveys insanity maybe better than almost any film I've ever watched. Like, the whole film feels crazy. It feels like a happy accident. Like, it shouldn't exist in a way. Like, it's so fucking tainted and bizarre and out there and wonderful, and I'm so glad that it does exist. But yeah, wow, what an incredible film this is. And a lot of people watch this now, of course, and they're desensitized and whatever, and they'll just be like, this is boring, this is lame. It is not. This is real horror. And I'm not usually the person to be like, you kids today with your films, it's not real horror. I'm not saying that we don't have horror today. I'm not saying that this is like miles better or anything, but this is horror to me. Like, but I don't want to get too much into that. I've preached about that many times. And Franklin's asking Sally where his knife is, and she's like, you know, I didn't have it last. You had it last. And she's like, fine, I'll look for it. She goes in the van. She looks for it for a full, like, 3 seconds, 5 seconds at best. She's like, I can't find it. Oh, geez. Typical. I've dealt with people like that many times. Sally and Pam are foxy ladies, man. And I love how Franklin is like keeps going on about like the hitchhiker's gonna come back for him, and then he eventually decides on that Kirk, that the guy's probably terrified that Kirk would kill him, that he, would defend him and kill him. And it's like, Kirk didn't do shit, okay? That guy attacked you, and Kirk just screamed, opened the door, and let him out, and then didn't even ask you if you were okay. He didn't try to protect you in the slightest. Why do you think Kirk is going to help? Why do you think Kirk is going to protect you, is going to kill this guy? There's no reason you should believe that, and there's definitely no reason that psychopath is going to believe it either. So yeah, I thought that was really funny. And then, yeah, Sally brings Franklin in the chair, like, through the woods. Oh my God, that would be impossible. As she continues to keep explaining, like, this is impossible. And then he is chainsawed to death in his wheelchair. I don't know, like, I'm not saying that one life is more than another, or like one's more sad or tragic or whatever, but chainsawing a dude in a wheelchair, I don't know, there's just something about that is just extra fucked up. And he just keeps going in on him. He's like going in, he's coming down. I mean, he is hacking the shit out of this guy. And then, Sally's being chased through the woods. Like, I've mentioned this a lot in reviews where I'm like, you just don't know how you would react if you were being chased by a guy with a chainsaw at night through the woods. This is what I'm talking about. This is the moment I'm talking about. This is always what I'm referencing. Sally's mind, her heart, everything would be racing a million miles per hour. She would not be able to even function. So for people to be like, that's so stupid, how could she fall down? How could she make that decision? Really? Like, let's chase you with a fucking chainsaw through the woods at night alone after you just watched your brother hacked up in front of you, and you're pretty sure all your other friends are dead as well, and you're the only one alone out in this rural area back in 1973 when there was no fucking cell phones and there was no help and there was no ambulances coming to get you. Fuck off. This girl would have been terrified and made the dumbest decisions. The fact that she can even run is amazing to me. Anyways, I know I talk about that a lot, but it really annoys me when people talk about that kind of shit. I love when Jerry comes in the house and he finds Pam, and he sees her and she looks dead, and then she comes in and she like convulses out of the thing, and he turns around, and he has maybe one of the most genuine screams outside of Sally's. He probably has the second most genuine scream when he turns around. He's like, ah, and he's just terrified as Leatherface cracks him over the head. And then Leatherface like runs around, he looks out the window, and he's just scared, and it's like he doesn't like it at all. And the father at the end also explains how he's not really into it, although his actions suggest differently. But Leatherface clearly doesn't like it. I think that the dad is in complete denial that he does love it, and the hitchhiker son, it just outright loves it. He's all about it. He's the craziest of them all because he wants it. He isn't being forced to. Like, Leatherface feels like he's been taught this, and that's all he knows, and he defends his house, and he's the one that has to kill, and he's the one that has to like cut him up and this and that. and he kind of makes the best of it by hiding his ugly appearance and cutting off their faces and wearing them as masks and whatnot. But the hitchhiker really just feels like the only person who's really, really into it. And then yeah, she gets to the gas station. It's like everywhere she goes. She goes to the house and it's their house. Then she goes to the gas station and that's ran by them. It's like everywhere she goes is run by this family. It's not just one killer. Like everywhere she runs to, it's just not safe. And that's the scary part of this film too, is that there is no escape. There is no one that can help in that moment. She ends up obviously finding someone who can at the very, very end, but oh my God, the amount of shit she goes through. And then the dad takes her and he puts her in the car and, you know, he has her in the sack and he gives an incredible performance here as well as, you know, with the hitchhiker. His performance is just as fucking out, you know, insane. But he's like poking her with the stick and laughing and he's crazy. And then she wakes up and she's freaking out. And I know they had like these guys in like 110-degree like house and drove them insane for all these shots. And she was just screaming all day. And like when we see her losing her mind, that's actually her, the actress, losing her mind because she couldn't take it anymore. And it shows. Like she is traumatized in that scene. That's beyond acting. Like, I've always said that acting afraid in a horror movie is probably one of the hardest forms of acting. It's so hard to convey true terror. And Sally, or Marilyn Burns, does so in this film. You want to see what true terror looks like on screen in a fictional film? Here you go. This chick is fucking wrecked mentally in that moment. And it shows heavily. I like when her arms are tied to the chair. There's other arms from another body that's been severed and just, you know, they are the arms of the chair and her arms are on top of those arms. Ooh, how gross would that be? To be tied to a chair with other arms on top of your arms. And her reaction to finding out that grandpa is still alive, like when he starts sucking and he brings his arms up and he's all like excited about it and she looks and she's just like, she's horrified. At that moment, she can't even move. She can't even think. She can't do anything. It's just like, that's even one step beyond. It's like, I thought this guy was dead. And she just is, you know, gone in that moment, vacant. She can't believe what she's seeing. This is so out there. And I thought it was kind of interesting that at the beginning, when John Larroquette's doing the opening, he said, you know, Sally and her invalid brother and all that, like, they could have lived long lives, but they wouldn't have, you know, couldn't have imagined the horrors they would see that night. Like, Franklin really didn't see shit. Like, Franklin saw Leatherface, and then he was chainsawed instantly. Like, the people who really saw the shit were the chicks. Pam and Sally. The ladies get it way worse. Like, the guys, they die quick. You know, Kirk and frickin' Jerry and Franklin, they go down real quick. But the women in this film are tortured. So, yeah, I think they should have updated that thing and been like, Pam and Sally could have never lived long enough to see what the mad and macabre they'd be facing that night. And all those close-ups of her face and her eyeball and the table, and Leatherface is wearing Pam's face and her makeup and everything's on her face. And he is also wearing an old woman's mask, like an old woman's face at one point as well. So he's kind of all over the place in this film. I think it gives a little bit of credence to what a lot of people talk about with the fourth film, The New Beginning, or Next Generation, there you go. I'm thinking of fucking Friday the 13th. That he's a cross-dresser or whatever. I don't know. Like, he's wearing Sally's face in this, and he's got makeup all over his face and whatnot. I think that's where they probably lifted that from. But I don't mind. We'll get to that. I'm getting to all of these, except for the new Leatherface, the one by the guys who did Inside and all that. Like, I already reviewed that, so you can go look for that one. And then she breaks out. The grandpa's trying to kill her. He's too old to even hold the damn thing, and he's like slamming it down. He finally like cracks her, and then, you know, the hitchhiker's like, give it to me, and he grabs it, and she just jumps out, runs, and breaks through the window, which is so clearly a stunt double. It's hilariously not her hair or build at all. She jumps through the window. Leatherface comes through the door. Hitchhiker's freaking cutting up her back as she's running. It's so cruel. and then he gets mowed down by this truck. Looks so great. And the truck driver gets out, freaks out, grabs a pipe wrench, throws it at Leatherface. Leatherface cuts into his own leg, jumps up. You know, Sally jumps in the back of the truck and is just laughing her ass off. And Leatherface is, do the dance for me, baby. Like, he's doing his dance. And then she's screaming and he's dancing, and then just cut to credits. Like, it just leaves the audience. Like, it's just such a gut punch. And then it's like, credits, okay, go home. There's no happy ending. It's a happy ending, but not really. You're still in the thick of the insanity. There is no like waning down kind of time where, like, you know, you exercise for a long period of time and then you do like that cool down where you like walk for like 5 minutes and then you kind of slowly progress. It's like just running and then just stop and you just throw the person off the treadmill. Get back to your life. You're so still in it. And that moment when it ends, you're just so tense and you're just like, fuck just happened? What the fuck just happened? So I love the really grim, fucking crazy ending here. Oh God, it's fantastic. So if you can't see, I love this film, as all older horror fans do. I'm sure some of the new generations, I think a lot of people, Andrew Becker was actually talking about this recently with Halloween, and he was saying he wasn't sure of the validity to a bunch of youths saying that Halloween was like an amazing film and they love it and it's like their favorite ever. And he believed someone like me and Lee McCoy saying Halloween was our favorite films because we came from an older generation and that's what we grew up on and that's what we adapted to and this and that. And, you know, it's kind of just like expected of horror fans to like these movies now. Like, it's like, oh, you don't like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you don't like this, you don't like that, you don't like Halloween, whatever. You're a poser, you're not real, you're not a freaking true fan. So I do sometimes wonder how much of the newer generation is liking these films by default versus genuine like amazement and you know this natural affinity that they have while watching it, where they're just kind of mesmerized by it and think it's art and really do see how wonderful it is. I do have to wonder that sometimes. And that's not making me sound like I get it and they don't and they're not true horror fans. Not at all. Not at all. Because I can tell you straight up, like, I don't like films. I don't like old horror films. Like, I have this classic Monsters Universal thing right here, which I bought to do, and I will probably eventually get to those. I'm not really looking forward to it because the ones that I have seen, it's just not my thing. They're too old. I don't get them. They're too damn slow. Nothing's happening in them. And I talk to plenty of people who love them genuinely. So a film like this, I always do have to wonder, and Halloween and whatnot, if people truly love them like I do. Like where I watch it and I legitimately see it as a masterpiece. I see it as, you know, this work of art. And I'm not just forcing it because it's expected of me as a horror fan. I do have to wonder sometimes when I talk to younger kids if they're watching this being like, yeah, totally this is good. And you're like, do you like this really? Isn't this like, you know, so anyway, I'm not calling anyone out, but thoughts on that? If anyone's still here? I know I say that a lot. I know there's a few people who always watch to the end. So thank you. Anyways, I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is one of the craziest fucking sequels of all time queued up. Just got the Scream Factory release, so I'm super stoked to go check that out. So I'm going to go watch that. All right, guys.